Hi everyone, welcome. What you see here is a relatively small head of cauliflower, which I guess just sat around a little bit too long and started to spoil. So rather than turning into a meal for humans, it's been transformed into the next meal for this bin of worms right here. What we've got here are red wigglers occupying one of my older systems. At 230 days of age, I believe I've only got one other system that's actually older than this, if you don't count my Vermibag Mini. My Vermibag Mini is by far my oldest system, but that thing is really designed just to sort of keep going and going perpetually versus most of my systems like these, where I run them for a finite period of time, harvest the castings, move the worms out, start afresh. So here, the feeding zone indicator is the telltale as to what we've been doing here in this system. So way back when, we went into this corner of the bin and we started a feeding pattern of pocket feedings or corner feedings. So way back then, at the very beginning of the bin's life cycle, we had fed a couple times down the middle, but then on the third feeding, we fed there, and then it was feeding 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So the system has actually been fed 18 times overall, and 16 of those feedings have been these pocket feedings. Now actually returning us to the starting corner again. And as we usually do in here, we're just going to backtrack a little bit before we dig a hole over there in that corner to give them their cauliflower feeding. And our main reason for doing that is just to see how the past feedings are coming along. And you know what? I just noticed it's a little bit dim in here. Let me see if I can improve. There we go. I just noticed I had not turned on some of my lights. So, okay, let's just get to it. I did check what the past feedings were. Last time we gave them watermelon, and after 13 days, my guess is that the stuff has probably been consumed by this time. Here I'm finding little scraps of corn cob. And then if you keep going around, over here in this corner, we had fed them banana. If you go back 3 feedings, though, I really don't remember at this point what was fed over here. But that would take us back, many weeks. So really quick, let's just see how the worms did with the watermelon rinds that we gave them. Considering what the feeding consisted of, my guess is that they probably came in here, wolfed all that stuff down 1, 2, 3, and have since disbanded, looking around elsewhere for other stuff to chew on. It's like here I feel something that might be a little tiny bit of the very thin outer skin of the watermelon. Other than that, all the juicy delicious food has been stripped off of it. And don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean that that's not going to get consumed either. Everything will get consumed. It's just that certain things resist breakdown a little bit more than others and take more time. So here I'm finding bits and pieces of, I guess these would probably be, mango seed husks, probably, just judging from their appearance. And they're very fragile. They break apart pretty easily. I guess at some point when the fragments get so small that you don't really even notice them as fragments of past feedings, at that point you're not really checking in on the stuff any longer. So in most cases I'll just leave stuff like that intact, but I was maybe, I don't know, I'll be honest, I was maybe expecting a little bit more action over there in that corner. I guess maybe when it comes to watermelon rinds, perhaps 13 days is a little bit too much time to wait if you want to return and see a worm party. So this to me looks like a banana stem, and I think what I bumped into over here was also a banana stem. And I couldn't tell you how many feedings ago those fragments were put in here. I've had other systems where I've kept much better records on what type of stuff was fed when, but in here we decided deliberately to be just a little bit more informal in my record keeping, so I don't have any sort of good records short of going back to my videos to review what's going on here. And you know, I really like the moisture content of this system so far. I mean, maybe I'm just getting a skewed result looking at the corner that was most recently fed watermelon, so maybe it's deceiving. Here, going back 2 feedings now, since that was 13 days ago, I believe here it was another 12 days, so this would go back 25 days. 2 feedings ago when we put a banana, an entire banana, not just banana peels. Here, I took an entire banana, snapped it in half, and dropped those 2 halves of the banana in here. And when we came in here last time to check on this feeding zone, man, there were a lot of worms in here, that's for sure. And once again, the moisture is really holding out great. I had put aside a piece of plastic thinking that maybe if things seemed a little bit overly dry in here, we could try to protect the system, you know, by putting at least some plastic coverings on here. But I'm starting to think that we're okay with just using the paper that's on there now. And this is always a little confusing to me. It almost seems to me like the feeding zone that was fed 3 times ago, so long ago that I don't even remember the details of what I put in here. It almost seems to me like this might be the more busy corner of the 3 we've checked so far. Watch, when we go to excavate the corner that we're feeding today, we're going to probably find that that corner, being the oldest corner that's been fed the longest time ago, will be the most busy. But man, the castings are really beautiful. Here and there I'm still bumping into food scraps, which is understandable, but man, moisture level, just the crumbliness, the consistency of it all feels so nice. And what is this? This has some sort of weird stringy kind of consistency to it, and it definitely seems like it's in the process of breaking down. But I really couldn't tell you what it is. I don't recognize it. But whatever. I'm putting it right in here, thinking that maybe that's where I excavated it from and that's where I came from. So let's just return it to where it came from so we can get on with the check-in, because all that remains now is just to excavate the feeding zone that we're putting today's yummy portion into, and then we'll be finished. Here too, no surprise, lots and lots of really lovely castings, a good many worms kind of hanging out, almost as if they knew where the food's coming next. But I would definitely have to suggest that that's just insane to think that they could possibly know what's coming up next, where the feeding zones keep getting changed. Man, we definitely gave this corner a nice spacious opening. And I guess part of the thinking here was that maybe I do want to go with a really big opening and plop that thing in whole. So I thought that that might be an interesting way to, not guarantee, but possibly increase the odds of us coming back next time and finding a little bit more action if we don't fragment their foods so much and put it in fairly big. Maybe it has the chance of sticking around for future check-ins so we can gawk at the worm party, but I guess we'll see. So the feeding zone indicator, I think, is holding up good enough to use one more time, so we'll not use it as bedding, but I've got my prepared bedding we could plop in some of over here in the feeding zone. So why don't we start with that? We'll try to be generous, because even last time I think I might have been running a little bit low on bedding, which might explain why I was a little bit reluctant to give them any of my shredded bedding mix, because all we threw into the last feeding zone was like a torn up piece of cardboard, and that was the extent of the bedding application on that go around. So today I figured let's just get the bedding applications generous again, since I've got a whole bunch now. I shredded up a whole bunch of paper cardboard so I can replenish my supply of bedding almost any time at this point. I sprinkled in a little bit of the grit that I use which is pulverized eggshell. And I figured before we backfill that feeding zone, let's stick to the theme and continue to be really generous. And maybe with that nice large morsel of food and a fairly generous application of bedding, perhaps next time we will find a pretty good sized worm party going on over there in the last pocket feeding that they just received. So I didn't want to dwell too much on issues, but this is one of the systems in which I observed worms crawling out of the system. But there were two other systems, a pair of bins, in which I saw the same exact behavior of the worms exiting their bin, ending up on the floor. A really perilous situation for the poor wormies. But I didn't really think it had anything to do with what's actually in the bin, per se, because, hey, it's happening in 3 separate locations. It must be something external causing them to freak out. So I didn't really want to go on some sort of a wild goose chase trying to figure out what's causing the worms to exhibit that unusual climbing and exiting of the bin behavior. I just figured I would let it ride, but it seemed worthy of mention, so I've mentioned it. Alright everyone, that's it for our check-in with the now 230-day-old worm bin getting its 18th feeding, actually 16th pocket feeding, following 2 non-pocket feedings after a 13-day interval since the last check-in. I think they're doing great. Beautiful looking bin, so I can't complain. So that's it for our check-in, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.